Tonight, airport panic. Passengers dive for cover as a tornado rips through the St. Louis airport and surrounding neighborhoods. I'm Russ Mitchell. Also tonight, in Libya with NATO forces pounding his strongholds, why is Muammar Gaddafi handing over defense of Misrata to local tribesmen? Street art. A high-profile museum exhibition sparks a new debate over whether graffiti is art or vandalism. And the common touch. With the big wedding less than a week away, the young royals are going all out to show they're in touch with the British public.
This is the CBS Evening News with Russ Mitchell.
And good evening. Residents of St. Louis tonight are still sifting through the aftermath of a tornado that took out homes and forced the city's only passenger airport to shut down. In the past 24 hours, violent thunderstorms have raced from Oklahoma to Indiana, but the damage in St. Louis could have an impact on air travel for days. The good news, amazingly, no one was killed. Cynthia Bowers has the latest.
Witnesses say it was bedlam.
It's a tornado.
And even though Lambert Field was under a tornado watch, no one expected a powerful twister to barrel down a runway and slam into the historic airport. Enormous windows shattered, sending glass flying into Lambert's main terminal. This surveillance video shows the time of impact, with travelers and airport employees diving for cover to avoid flying debris.
I mean, we got to the terminal, lights were out, there was glass everywhere, it was just open, there was blood everywhere from where people had been cut.
This is the jet that was pushed sideways from gate 12.
3 planes filled with passengers rode out the scary storm on the tarmac. East of the airport, dozens of homes bore the brunt of a twister packing winds of up to 166 miles an hour.
We just thank the Lord that we were okay and all our neighbors are okay.
In Maryland Heights, residents scavenged through what was left of their homes, searching for anything that wasn't blown away.
It was a mess, scary. I don't want to live through it again. And as you can see, we're picking up the pieces.
The small city of Berkeley, just a few miles east of the airport, was also hard hit.
I was sitting right there on this couch.
Emory Washington and his family made it to the basement just seconds before the tornado completely destroyed their home. Folks here say they are just grateful there were no injuries.
Yeah, my whole life flashed right in front of me, and I just hope never experience that again. Hope no one has to experience that anymore.
It's an amazing sight.
The state has declared this a disaster area, and the 30,000 without power could be in the dark for days.
It was horrific, and for that much damage to be done and no one lost their life, it is simply a blessing.
The airport expects to be up and running at least 70% capacity as early as tomorrow. Recoveries in communities like this will take a lot longer. And forecasters caution an extremely dangerous weather pattern is forming that could drop tornadoes just as strong as this one, anywhere from Illinois all the way down to Texas Monday and Tuesday. And once again, St. Louis is in the path of the storm. Russ?
Cynthia Bowers in the St. Louis suburb of Berkeley, Missouri. Thank you very much. Now let's turn to the battle for Libya. The U.S. says it launched its first Predator drone attack today. While on the ground, the Gaddafi regime pulled its troops back from the western city of Misrata. But as Alan Pizzi reports, the retreat may not be good news for the city's rebel defenders.
Fierce fighting in the ruins that make up the front lines of Misrata have apparently gone the rebels' way. An area around a medical facility that has been hotly contested for days has reportedly fallen to rebels, but the cost was high, both to them and Gaddafi's troops.
These are militia of Muammar Gaddafi. These are want to kill us.
Wounded loyalist soldiers said they had been ordered to retreat and had booby-trapped buildings they abandoned. The Libyan government said it was pulling regular forces back because NATO airstrikes had made what a Libyan official called a surgical solution impossible, and local tribesmen would take over the fight.
They will move in and they will talk to the rebels. If they don't surrender, then they will engage them in fight.
Civilian victims were evacuated today on a ship chartered to bring out stranded migrant workers. In Tripoli, a NATO airstrike slammed into what Libyan officials said was a parking lot outside the compound of Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, killing 3 civilians. The hole showed what looked like a concrete bunker under the sand. The first attack by a U.S. Predator drone was carried out today. Surveillance drones have been in use since the start of the no-fly operations. The armed version carries Hellfire missiles which can strike small targets in urban areas. Libyan officials called the predators a dirty tactic.
It will be another crime against humanity committed by the American administration.
It's not clear how many tribesmen there are in the area who'd be willing to fight or where their loyalties lie. But putting them into the fight makes it more complicated for NATO to intervene, even with the precision of the Predator drones. Russ?
Alan, what else do we know about these tribes?
Well, they're generally considered to be loyal to Gaddafi, Russ. That's his area in the West. Now, Libya is a very tribal society, although they keep trying to say, no, we don't care, we're all Libyans. In fact, it is tribal. But whether or not Gaddafi could rally a lot of tribesmen to fight on his side remains to be seen. But the fact that he's trying to use them is a rather cunning ploy because it does complicate matters endlessly.
Alan Pizzi in Benghazi. Thank you. Elsewhere in the region, Syrian forces fired in funeral processions in a Damascus suburb today as violent crackdowns were reported in other cities across the country as well. Mandy Clark has the latest on the mounting toll of dead and wounded.
Grief turns into terror as mourners are fired upon. Protesters are unable to bury their dead. They say even funerals are targeted by government forces. But despite the danger, they insist they will not give up.
We will go on the streets with empty hands, with open chests, till we get what we want.
This determination by protesters to overthrow Syrian President Bashar Assad comes in spite of the mounting deaths. Yesterday was the bloodiest day in the country's month-long uprising. Aid groups say more than 120 people died over the past 2 days, as security forces fired bullets and tear gas at thousands of unarmed demonstrators. President Assad has been trying to defuse the protests by launching a series of concessions. Demonstrators say they have come too late. Where are you? Where are you, Assad? They chant. We will take off your head. The brutal state crackdown prompted 2 lawmakers and a religious leader to resign, but the bloodshed only seems to have emboldened the protesters. Many of them now say the only way to honor those who have died is to continue the fight for freedom. Mandy Clark, CBS News, London.
The U.S. military says 2 American soldiers were killed yesterday during operations in southern Iraq. Officials did not say how the men died. 9 U.S. soldiers have been killed this month in Iraq. Here at home, the debate over raising the national debt ceiling will resume at full volume when Congress returns from its Easter recess. Whit Johnson in Washington has more on the battle and the latest read on public opinion.
The U.S. credit limit of $14.3 trillion is almost maxed out.
If our creditors start worrying that we may be unable to pay back our debts, that could drive up interest rates for everybody who borrows money.
President Obama wants an up or down vote in Congress, but for the GOP, it's an opportunity to win more concessions in the form of spending cuts.
There will not be an increase in the debt limit without something really, really big attached to it.
And it's not just Republicans. According to a CBS News New York Times poll, 63% of Americans, fed up with Washington's lack of fiscal discipline, are opposed to raising the debt limit.
I don't believe it would be a good idea. I don't think putting off something that's as important to the country is going to help in the long run.
We did raise our debt ceiling. We took on, huge government investment projects to get us through that crisis. I think we're now time to move on and get our debt under control and look to the future.
In the near future, the national debt is expected to hit its limit by mid-May. Some crafty bookkeeping could extend the hard deadline to early July, but if the ceiling isn't raised, the U.S. would go into default for the first time ever. Some predict that would spark another recession, even worse than in 2008.
Everything's already been appropriated, so it's comparable to, we signed the lease on our apartment, we signed for our car loan, all these other expenses. Now it's time to pay the bills.
The White House is confident that Congress will eventually make a deal, but with so many Americans still unconvinced that the debt limit should be raised, it sets the stage for another high-stakes political drama here in Washington. Russ.
Whit Johnson at the White House. Thanks. For more perspective on the debt ceiling and what a default might mean to the economy, We're joined by Jim Awad, Managing Director of Zephyr Management. Jim, good evening to you.
Thank you.
In a nutshell, why should Americans be concerned about this?
Well, the government borrows money to repay maturing debt, to pay interest on debt outstanding, and to pay for the Army, Medicare, Social Security, and all of that would stop if the government ran out of money and couldn't borrow anymore.
Okay, again, this number is staggering, $14.3 trillion. That's the debt. How did we get to this point?
We got here gradually over time through a buildup in entitlements and basically spending more than we take in revenues. But recently, it's gone up really dramatically over the last 10 years. Under President Bush, you paid for 2 wars and a tax cut. That was $4 trillion. Under President Obama, you had a stimulus program and some bailouts. That was another $4 trillion. So that's why the curve has gone up dramatically.
As someone who watches money, management money, out of control?
Out of control, but if we start to fix it, I think that foreign investors will give us a little bit of time to make it right, but we must start right now.
Okay, from a practical matter, at the end of the day, Congress really has no choice but to make a deal on this, right?
Congress has no choice. There will be a deal made. There will be brinkmanship. There will be side agreements on future spending and taxes. It's going to go right up to the end. A lot of politics, a lot of poker, but they will raise it.
Okay, Jimmy Awad, thanks for your insight. Always appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Still ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, Graffiti Backlash. A museum exhibit is tagged with encouraging copycat vandalism. With gas prices hovering around $4 a gallon, one station in Orlando, Florida may be accused of highway robbery. It is charging customers $5.69 a gallon. And drivers beware, there is not a single sign posted at the station showing the pump price. The first major museum exhibition of graffiti opened this week in Los Angeles to large crowds. But what the curators on the inside are calling art is seen by some folks on the outside as something else entirely. Ben Tracy has more.
This is like this every day.
Gary Kulati runs this furniture-making business in Los Angeles, but his custom designs are taking a back seat to the graffiti plastered all over his walls, signs, and dumpster.
It's not art. It may in fact be art, but they shouldn't be putting it on other people's building.
For store owners and residents overwhelmed by taggers trying to make their mark, graffiti has become a dirty word. But the Museum of Contemporary Art in downtown LA is trying to change that. It's launched a new exhibit that traces the history of graffiti over the past 4 decades. It features works by 50 of the most influential street artists, including Britain's elusive Banksy and the legendary Basquiat.
Part of our goal with this exhibition was to kind of maybe steer young graffiti artists away from doing illegal work and getting more excited about the fact that they could possibly have a real career in this.
But Los Angeles police claim the show is doing just the opposite. They say it's actually causing a rise in graffiti and vandalism in neighborhoods surrounding the museum, the handiwork of taggers trying to steal the spotlight. One international street artist who goes by the name Space Invader has been putting up these tiled images on nearby buildings. Officials here at the museum say reports of vandalism are overblown. They say most people attracted to this exhibit are not taggers, they're regular folks, just curious about this art. People like Laura Fanning, who came here with her 2 daughters and left with a new view of graffiti.
I just saw it more as vandalism. Now I see it more as a commentary and a way of expressing oneself, like I'm going to put my mark here.
But Gary Kulati has a message for anyone who thinks graffiti is art.
If somebody feels it's art and they want it in their house, they should have it in their house. I don't need it on my building. I don't want it on my building.
But some now think it's so good, it belongs on these museum walls. Ben Tracy, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Just ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, united in grief. Victims of 9/11 and the Oklahoma City bombing come together to heal. This week marked 16 years since the Oklahoma City bombing. It was the worst act of terrorism on U.S. soil until 9/11. In tonight's Weekend Journal, we visit victims of both tragedies who have come together to help one another move past the pain. As Oklahoma City marked 16 years since the bombing that killed 168 of its citizens.
So you're having to go through this again and again.
A group of September 11th families was there.
My mother, Diane Althouse,
and our big sister, Miss Bailey Almond.
Eleni Kosoulis led the World Trade Center United Family Group in honor of her sister Danielle, a bond broker who was trapped on 9/11 on one of the top floors of the Twin Towers.
She had this amazing zest for life. She always had a smile on her face.
Kosoulis believes Oklahoma City families truly understand what her family went through in 2001.
I was finally able to talk to people who went through the experience. And it's not only the experience of losing a loved one so suddenly, but it's losing someone to terrorism.
There is an annual pilgrimage to both cities on the anniversaries.
We help each other. There's times that, like today, I need that hug.
Rudy Guzman's brother, Randy, oversaw the Marines recruiting station on the 6th floor of the bombed federal building. Guzman has stood with 9/11 families at their memorial service and plans to return in September.
As long as I put a smile on someone, I did my job.
In Oklahoma City, 9/11 families see positive results. A peaceful memorial, a chair for every victim, representing that empty chair at the dinner table. Gates display 9:01, the minute before the attack, and 9:03, the minute after.
You have to give yourself time to go through the process.
At shared meals, the families share their emotions.
Guilt part, that was, we kind of went through that too.
Survivors and emergency responders are part of the exchange.
That's my desk right here.
Calvin Mosier worked for the Department of Housing and Urban Development on the 8th floor and escaped the Oklahoma blast. His best friend and office mate, David Jack Walker, did not. This week, Mosier was among the Oklahomans to sew a stitch in a large American flag salvaged from New York's Ground Zero.
I'm hoping that they can see within us the fact that there is a light beyond where they may be today.
For Judy and Kevin Bailey, who lost their son Brett in the Trade Center attack, visiting Oklahoma is healing.
I can see that it can be done, and it really helps you to wake up every morning and to put your feet on the ground and start running again.
Those bright stripes and bright stars.
Victims of terror, with common threads, knitting their hearts together.
How are you? They're 6 years ahead of us, and so, I think I look at them and be like, okay, at some point I hope to be even further along.
There is a time in which you will remember back and think so fondly of your friends and don't think so much about the terror that took them.
The Oklahoma City Memorial was completed on the 5th anniversary of that attack. The 9/11 Memorial at Ground Zero is scheduled to open this September, a decade after the attacks. We'll be back. Finally this evening, the guest list for the royal wedding was released today. Included on the list, Elton John, David Beckham, and 46 royals from other lands. Britain's young royals want to be known for more than just their blue blood backgrounds, as Barry Peterson reports.
In a tradition dating to the 15th century, Queen Elizabeth handed out gifts to her subjects on her birthday, her 85th. But for the new generation of royals now coming into its own, ritual doesn't seem as important as relevance.
We don't want them to be ordinary, we want them to be extraordinary, but with a common twist.
Britain has seen Prince William's charity work take him around the world.
It's just trying to, find your own way.
His willingness to reach out to those in need echoes the compassion of his mother, Princess Diana.
She's sort of a bit guardian angel, rocking about up there, looking at them, and I think they feel that too.
Younger brother Prince Harry also works for charities, joining a fundraising walk for wounded soldiers near the North Pole. Glad to be the one to test a survival suit personally. And as a soldier in Afghanistan, joking about how the Queen took his deployment.
Saying, are you cool with this? And I think she was like, yeah, splendid idea, yeah, go for it. So she couldn't be more than happy to get rid of me.
Others in the new generation are also making their own way. Zara Phillips is the daughter of Princess Anne, Prince Charles' sister. Princess Anne decided not to give her children royal titles. Zara's success is her own. As a top horsewoman, she is training for a spot on Britain's Olympic equestrian team. And later this year will marry renowned rugby player Mike Tyndall in a wedding that will have no royal overtones. Perhaps upbringing matters, Prince Charles was the product of a more formal era, while William and Harry grew up with a mother far more affectionate, making them seem easier to know, easier to like, and far more likely to change the monarchy into something that better reflects the 21st century. Barry Peterson, CBS News, London.
And that is the CBS Evening News. Later on CBS, 48 Hours Mystery. Thanks for joining us this Saturday evening. I'm Russ Mitchell, CBS News in New York. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Good night.
On television, online, on the go, and now free on iPad. CBS News.